Last night, the Stephen Colbert Show erupted into chaos as host Stephen Colbert and guest Elon Musk clashed in a fiery, no-holds-barred confrontation that left jaws on the floor. The tension was palpable from the moment Musk stepped onto the stage, and what started as a routine interview spiraled into a viral moment of raw hostility that ended with Musk being booted from the set. Social media is ablaze, and viewers are reeling from the shocking spectacle. The stage was set for drama from the opening moments of last night's episode. Stephen Colbert, known for his sharp wit and incisive commentary, welcomed Elon Musk, the polarizing tech mogul behind Tesla, SpaceX, and X Corp, with a smile that barely masked his skepticism. The audience, buzzing with anticipation, sensed the undercurrent of tension. Musk, dressed in his signature black jacket and exuding his usual mix of confidence and defiance, took his seat, ready to spar. Colbert wasted no time diving into a pointed question about Musk's recent controversial posts on X, where he doubled down on his views about free speech and government regulation. "Elon, you've called yourself a free speech absolutist," Colbert began, his tone laced with challenge. "But critics say your platform amplifies division. How do you square that with responsibility?" The question landed like a gauntlet, and Musk's eyes narrowed. Musk leaned forward, his voice steady but edged with irritation. "Stephen, I'm not here to coddle feelings. X is a raw feed of human thought, good and bad. If you want a sanitized bubble, go back to legacy media." The audience gasped, some cheering, others murmuring disapproval. Colbert, unfazed, pushed harder. "So you're saying you're fine with chaos as long as it's profitable?" The jab was sharp, and Musk's jaw tightened. "Profit? This isn't about money. It's about truth. Something you might not recognize through your corporate lens." The crowd roared, split between boos and applause, as the temperature in the studio spiked. What began as a tense exchange quickly escalated into a verbal cage match. Colbert, leaning into his role as the everyman skeptic, grilled Musk on his labor practices at Tesla, citing reports of workplace safety issues. "You're building cars for the future, but are you running sweatshops to do it?" Colbert asked, his voice dripping with accusation. Musk shot back, "You're parroting. Headlines you don't understand. My factories are cutting edge, and my workers are paid better than your writers, Stephen." The personal dig drew a sharp inhale from the audience, and Colbert's smile vanished. "Oh, we're going there?" he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Let's talk about your track record then. Dodging taxes, cozying up to authoritarians, buying your way out of accountability." The confrontation took a darker turn as Musk, now visibly angry, accused Colbert of being a mouthpiece for the establishment. "You sit here, night after night, pretending to challenge power while you're bankrolled by the same system you claim to critique," Musk snapped. "At least I'm building something real." Colbert, his face flushed, fired back. "Real? You're building a cult of personality, and you're mad because not everyone's drinking the Kool-Aid." The audience was on edge, hanging on every word, as the two men traded barbs with increasing venom. The civility of the talk show format was gone, replaced by a raw, unfiltered clash of egos. As the segment neared its end, the tension showed no signs of easing. Colbert, sensing the crowd's unease, tried to pivot to a lighter topic, asking Musk about his plans for Mars colonization. But Musk wasn't having it. "Why bother? You'd probably mock that too. Call it a billionaire's fantasy while you sit in your cushy studio," he said, his voice laced with contempt. Colbert's eyes flashed. "You know what, Elon? If you can't handle a few tough questions, maybe you're not as tough as you think." The audience erupted, some cheering Colbert's defiance, others stunned by the escalating hostility. Musk leaned back, a smirk playing on his lips, but his eyes burned with fury. The stage was set for an even bigger explosion, and no one could look away. The air in the Stephen Colbert Show studio crackled with hostility, as the confrontation between Stephen Colbert and Elon Musk barreled toward a breaking point. The audience, a volatile mix of cheers and gasps, was glued to the unfolding drama, sensing that the exchange was teetering on the edge of something unforgettable. Colbert, his composure fraying, gripped the edge of his desk, his knuckles whitening, as he stared down Musk. "You think you can just bulldoze through this interview like you do everything else?" he said, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. "This isn't your boardroom, Elon. You don't get to dictate the terms here." Musk's smirk widened, but his eyes were cold, calculating. "And you think you're some kind of hero, Stephen? You're just a guy with a microphone playing to the room." The crowd's reaction was deafening, a chaotic blend of boos and applause that only fueled the fire. Colbert, refusing to back down, leaned forward, his voice rising. "Playing to the room? I'm asking the questions people want answers to. Like why you keep dodging accountability for the chaos you stir up." He gestured to the audience, who roared in support, though some shouted Musk's name, amplifying the divide. Musk scoffed, crossing his arms. "Accountability? You want to talk about that? How about the media's accountability for twisting everything I say to fit their narrative? You're not asking questions, Stephen. You're performing." The accusation landed like a punch, and for a split second Colbert's face betrayed a flicker of doubt before he doubled down. "You want to talk performance?" Colbert shot back, his tone venomous. "Let's talk about your whole savior of humanity act. You're out here preaching about saving the planet while your factories churn out pollution and your workers file lawsuits. That's the real performance, Elon." The audience erupted again, the energy in the room electric and unstable. Musk's face darkened, his casual defiance giving way to raw anger. "You don't know the first thing about what it takes to build what I've built," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You sit here, night after night, tearing down people who actually take risks, while you hide behind your jokes and your applause sign." The personal attack stung, and Colbert's eyes narrowed as he absorbed the blow. The exchange grew uglier by the second, each man digging in deeper, their words like knives aimed at exposed vulnerabilities. Colbert, seizing the moment, pivoted to Musk's public persona. "You love to play the victim, don't you? Poor Elon, misunderstood genius, attacked by the world. But maybe people are just tired of your recklessness. Like that time you called a diver a pedophile because he bruised your ego." The audience gasped, the reference to Musk's infamous 2018 tweet a low blow that hit its mark. Musk's face flushed, his hands clenching into fists. "You want to go there, Stephen? Fine, let's talk about your sanctimonious act, preaching morality while you cozy up to the same elites you pretend to mock. At least I'm honest about who I am." The studio was a powder keg, the audience feeding off the raw hostility. Colbert, sensing he had the upper hand, pressed further. "Honest? You? The guy who overpromises on everything? Self-driving cars, hyperloops, brain chips? Where are they? Elon? Or is it all just hype to keep your stock price up?" Musk's eyes blazed, and he leaned forward, his voice a growl. "You think you can sit there and judge me? I've done more for humanity than you ever will. You're a parasite, feeding off controversy while I'm out there changing the world." The crowd was split, some chanting, "Elon," while others booed. The noise a chaotic backdrop to the escalating war of words. As the segment hurtled toward its close, the confrontation showed no signs of cooling. Colbert, his face a mask of controlled fury, fired one last salvo. "You talk a big game about changing the world, but all I see is a guy who can't handle being challenged. You're not a visionary, Elon. You're a bully." Musk's smirk was gone, replaced by a look of pure contempt. "And you're a clown, Stephen. Keep laughing. It's all you're good for." The audience was on its feet, the studio vibrating with tension, as the two men locked eyes, neither willing to yield. Something had to give, and it was clear the breaking point was moments away. The Stephen Colbert Show studio was a cauldron of raw emotion, the audience standing, shouting, as Stephen Colbert and Elon Musk faced off in a showdown that had spiraled far beyond a typical late-night interview. The air was thick with hostility, the weight of their words hanging like a storm cloud. Colbert, his voice steady but seething, leaned across his desk, his eyes boring into Musk. "You call me a clown, Elon? At least I'm not the one pretending to be a messiah while the world calls out your hypocrisy." Musk's face was a mask of barely contained rage, his hands gripping the arms of his chair. "Hypocrisy? You're the king of it, Stephen. You preach to your choir while the rest of us actually deal with reality." The crowd's roar was deafening, a chaotic mix of cheers for Colbert and defiant chants of Musk's name. The divide was stark, mirroring the polarized world beyond the studio walls. Colbert, fueled by the energy, stood up, a rare move that silenced the room for a split second. "Reality? Let's talk reality. You've built an empire on promises you can't keep, and when anyone dares question you, you lash out like a spoiled child. That's not leadership. That's cowardice." The accusation hit like a thunderbolt, and Musk shot to his feet, his voice booming. "Cowardice? You wouldn't last a day in my world, Stephen. You're nothing but a loudmouth with a teleprompter, and you know it." The audience was a sea of noise, some booing Musk's venom, others egging him on. The stage manager, visible in the wings, looked panicked, signaling to the control room, but Colbert waved him off, fully in command. "Your world?" Colbert snapped, stepping around his desk to face Musk directly. "Your world's a fantasy, where you're untouchable, but here you're just a guest who's worn out his welcome." Musk laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "You think you can intimidate me? I've faced down governments, Stephen. You're a blip. A nobody who thinks he's somebody because he's got a laugh track." The personal attack pushed Colbert to the edge, his face flushed with fury. "A nobody? I'm the guy holding you, accountable right now, and you hate it. You can't stand that someone's not bowing to the great Elon Musk." The crowd erupted, the noise a tidal wave, as Musk stepped closer, their faces inches apart. "Accountable? You're a joke, Stephen. You don't hold anyone accountable. You just pander to whoever's clapping loudest." The tension was unbearable, the studio a pressure cooker ready to explode. The audience sensed the endgame, their shouts a mix of excitement and unease. Colbert, his voice low and lethal, delivered the final blow. "You know what, Elon? I've had enough. You're not here to talk. You're here to bully, to deflect, to make excuses. But this is my show, and I'm done with your nonsense." He turned to the audience, raising his voice. "What do you say, folks? Should we keep listening to this?" The crowd roared back, a resounding "no" that shook the studio. Musk's eyes widened, realizing the tide had turned. "You're kicking me out?" he snarled, incredulous. "You don't have the guts." "Oh, I've got the guts," Colbert said, his voice steel. "Security, escort Mr. Musk off my stage." The audience gasped as two security guards appeared, moving toward Musk. He stood his ground for a moment, glaring at Colbert, then threw up his hands in disgust. "Fine, I'm done with this circus," he spat, ripping off his mic and tossing it on the chair. The crowd was in a frenzy, some cheering Colbert's stand, others stunned as Musk stormed toward the exit, pausing only to shout, "You'll regret this, Stephen." The door slammed behind him, the sound echoing like a gunshot. Colbert stood alone on the stage, breathing heavily as the audience erupted in a standing ovation. He raised a hand, silencing them, his face a mix of triumph and exhaustion. "Folks, that's not what I wanted tonight, but sometimes you have to draw a line. This show's about truth, not tantrums." The crowd cheered louder, their support unwavering. Colbert returned to his desk, his composure restored, and looked into the camera. "We'll be right back after this." The feed cut to commercial, but the moment was already viral, a defining clash that would dominate headlines. Colbert had stood his ground, and the audience, both in the studio and online, felt the weight of a victory hard won through unrelenting confrontation.